It's been a minute. Fans, welcome back in. It's just Beavin, but mock draft 1.0 edition. We are in the offseason. I know we never had a proper end of the season episode. That's on us. Life got a little bit busy, but we want to provide some offseason content where we can that isn't always related to Beaverfest. We know we have our rookie draft coming up in May, which will be extremely exciting. Forward to that, as always, stay tuned on our socials, especially on Instagram, beaver.fest, all the league updates in terms of drafting, trades that are made. I'm sure we'll get some great content at the draft as well. That's going to end up on there and so much more. Andy, JP here with you. This will be an NFL mock draft. We're mocking 1 through 32, just like you'd see on ESPN with Kuiper and McShay and all of them. JP, we get to be the analysts. We get to be the guys today. How are we doing? It's Friday, recording here on a Friday, and we get to do our first mock draft again.
Yeah, just got done with midterms, officially
Oh,
spring break for me.
there you
So
go.
yeah, this is a time for celebration and for mocking. Now we're in the full swing of the football off season. Free agency starts in a couple days here, and then after that, it's the countdown to the draft. So excited.
The draft will be fun, both Beaverfest draft and the NFL draft. We'll hope to do a couple of these throughout. Obviously, schedules get a little weird this time of year. We're recording this on a Friday. The window to start negotiating and verbally agree to these free agent contracts in the NFL is Monday. I plan to get this up at some point this weekend. You'll see it when you see it. Either way, this should not. We're going off what we think could happen in free agency. Things will get a little hairy from there. So we are going to hit our mock draft simulator. This is probably the best way to show our picks and do this here. JP and I have agreed that JP will be making the odd selections. I'll be making the even selections. Trades, we'll just kind of see how it goes. We originally, JP, I think before we start with Tennessee's pick, you and I were messaging back and forth this morning trying to put together any potential trade packages. And we had an agreement, or we thought we could see a world where the Giants move up to number one, but we since have backed off, and we believe Tennessee will still hold true with the number one pick.
Yeah, and that's truly more of my fault probably. I'm pretty sure there is a very clear world where the Giants do end up trading up to number one. But after Harold Landry just got released, literally an hour before us recording this, I think that kind of locked in Abdul Carter going one. So there's the spoiler for who I will be taking first overall for Tennessee, taking Abdul Carter. Out of Penn State. I think he's the best edge in this class. I have ranked as the second best player in this class, and he's a need for Tennessee. You build a long-term line there with him and Sweat, and you already have Simmons there. That gives Callahan some defense, and the offense is still bad enough where they can tank again and come and get Arch next year.
Yeah, Abdul Carter seems like the guy. I know there was some injury stuff that people were worried about. What was it? His leg, his shoulder,
A stress fracture
foot?
in his foot, I
Yeah,
believe.
foot. Yes, and I mean, some people are saying, we're Bears fans, and you see people go, oh, what if he's not falling anywhere? I mean, he is in terms of a draft that's very weird. This is, and I texted you this. This is a very 2022-esque draft to me. Not a strong quarterback class, but still stronger than the quarterbacks of that year. It was all-time bad quarterback year 3 years ago. But just the other positions in this draft, edge rusher, offensive line, you're going to see this throughout our mock. Offensive line, very, very huge, especially in this first round, are still of importance. But there are teams in this top five and in the top 10 that have quarterback needs. And we have one right here at number 2. This is the first pick I'll be making. And this is a rather easy pick to make. He is the best quarterback in this class. And we know that the Cleveland Browns, with the whole Deshaun Watson situation, he won't play this year. Plus, when he has been on the field, hasn't performed well. This seems pretty obvious that if they don't get a quarterback through the free agency or the trade market entering the draft, that Cam Ward will be their guy at number 2. Now, JP, I know I've seen, and you've seen him too, the Kirk Cousins, projections. He could go to Cleveland. What do you weigh in on all that?
Yeah, I think he'll be sitting put for a while. I don't think Atlanta can completely throw in the towel on him because if Penix comes out and does not look good, I'd imagine Kirk gets the keys back super early in the season, and then they go all the way with him, try and rebuild some value, and then probably dump him next offseason. Easily could be wrong, but that's how I kind of see this playing out.
Most definitely. We just haven't seen enough of Penix yet. We saw plenty of him in college, had a lengthy college career throughout his time at Indiana and Washington, but not a lot of NFL in-game reps. He did get some good starts last year. I agree, though. Still need to see a little bit more. Third overall pick. This is probably the first pick that we don't necessarily know. JP and I were joking. We decided him odds, me evens. Doesn't matter at the end of the day, but someone was going to have to make this pick. Giants could go quarterback, JP. They could also go elsewhere. Where do you have them leaning at 3?
I think if the draft were to hold true like this, I'm going to go out and say that they would take Travis Hunter at 3 in this situation. I think they end up trading for Geno Smith and bridging a year and maybe trading back into the first or holding out and taking someone like Ewers or McCord and the second, third, fourth, fifth. And because the problem is Dable and Shane have to win this year or they're gone. And GMs do stupid things. Not saying that drafting Travis Hunter is stupid. I'm saying that drafting Travis Hunter and bridging a year with Geno Smith, that may not even be enough to save your job. I mean, you'll probably win, 7, 8, 9 games, which would be an improvement. But I'm saying the stupid thing would be to draft Shadur Sanders or Jackson Dart at 3. I think the correct pick to make would be Travis Hunter. Go get Geno Smith, go get Sam Darnold, go get any of the veterans, try and salvage your job so then you can get a quarterback next year.
Yeah, I sent you a mock draft I saw from NFL Network the other day that had 1, 2, 3, no trades, all quarterbacks. I believe it was Sanders, Ward, and then Dart. And I messaged you. I'm like, I know there's a world where this happens, but Jackson Dart at number 3, I just can't see it right now. I know you said you could see a world where it happens. I'd be stunned. I really would be. So I like that train of thought. Travis Hunter's a dude. I mean, we all know that. Heisman Trophy winner, plays both sides of the ball. We'll see how that translates at the NFL level. Either way, you're getting one heck of an athlete out of this kid. He's going to thrive, even if he has to take limited snaps on one of the two sides of the ball. You know what you're getting out of this guy, a competitor and a true gamer in every single aspect of his game. New England here at 4, back to me. And there's a lot of ways that the Patriots go about this. They do need pass catchers for Drake May. There are guys out in the trade market right now. This isn't an awesome free agent wide receiver class, but with DK Metcalf requesting a trade from the Seahawks this past week, that is someone that New England should surely be in on. I love this guy. I know JP is a fan of this guy that I'm about to take as well. I like Will Campbell going at number 4 to New England. You need to beef up for Drake May. We are Bears fans. And obviously, we're going to have plenty to talk about when Chicago goes on the clock at 10. JP, I love Ted McMillan. I love this receiver class for the most part. I know the guys stocks are all over the place right now with the combine being last weekend. We had plenty to say about the combine. I just don't feel like 4 is the spot to go get a receiver. Will Campbell's a bona fide dude. He'll try to play on the outside. I think realistically he'll be more of a guard at the NFL level, but I still think at 4, he's just that type of talent up front that you can't pass on.
Yeah, I have no issues with New England going with Campbell. And quite frankly, I see that as a more realistic option. Ted McMillan is my top player in this class, and I think that'd be a huge need for them. They need someone to go catch the football. But I think addressing Campbell, you should probably address the line before you address the receiver room, much as we learned in Chicago this year. That did not matter who Williams was throwing to. He was getting killed every play. So I think the smart pick would be taking Campbell there. So I fully see the vision and fully agree with that pick.
This is a fun one here at 5. You get a couple of interesting decisions you got to make here, JP. Jacksonville. You said this when we had our pre-meeting before we hit the record button. You said that you could take someone here with Jacksonville, and 8 hours later, you'd want to change your decision. There's definitely a couple of ways they could go. Travis Hunter being off the board might make this easier for that new front office. I have a guy in mind that I think they should go with here on the board, but I want to see who you have the Jags take.
Yeah, so I'm really weighing my two options are Mason Graham and Tetaroa McMillan. Now, Mason Graham, I think, is the absolute fit. He's probably the guy they should go with. Eric Armstead was horrible last year, and you drop Graham in there with Walker and Allen, and that is genuinely a top 10, front 4 in the league. But with Liam Cohen coming over there, them just shipping out Kirk, Brian Thomas, Cohen has said, reminded him of Chris Godwin, and even said he wants to get him in a Chris Godwin role. So I'm going to go with Ted McMillan here, and I
All
think they
right.
go pair him. I think they pair him up with Mike Evans. Although I really think Ted McMillan's ceiling is higher than Mike Evans. He's faster, he runs better routes, and so yeah, that is a pick that really excites me as a football fan, but really scares me as a fantasy owner because I have Brian Thomas Jr. But I would still love to see Ted McMillan out there.
That's a fun pick indeed. Definitely not who I thought you were going to be going with. I was definitely in the Mason Graham camp, but I think that could be a move that they end up making. We saw what he was able to do up front at Michigan this past year. He'll go in the top 10. Where he'll go, we don't know. And now at 6, Vegas on the clock. I'm thinking quarterback, and this is where I have Shadur Sanders going. Yep, get the Shadur out and rolling. I mean, it makes sense. This is I think honestly, and I want to get your take on this. If Shadur does go in the top 5, could you see Jackson Dart going here at 6? I mean, obviously here in our mock, Shadur fell out of the top 5. Perfect for us to slot him in there. I think the Raiders draft a quarterback. They almost have to at this point with Pete Carroll coming in. I know there were early rumblings after he got the job of Russell Wilson. I don't really know if that's going to be in the cards. Either way, it just seems like Sanders and the Raiders, that is a fit, and that is exactly where we have him going here at number 6.
Yeah, this is one of those teams where I think free agency will really tell the story. If they bring in a vet, and depending on which vet, because
Yeah.
I've seen Rodgers and Devontae linked there, and so if they go Rodgers and Devontae, I still think a quarterback is in play at 6 because Rodgers, he's 43. I don't know how many more years of football he is going to play and or wants to play. So I think that leaves the door wide open for a quarterback there. But yeah, I totally agree with Shadur going there pretty much regardless. And like you said, if he was off the board, I still think they go Dart. So
Quarterback, no matter what, is what we're feeling here with the Raiders at 6. The Jets at 7. JP, what a weird offseason they're going to have coming up. You just mentioned Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams. They're both out of town. Aaron Glenn, as we like to call him, the Glenn Monster, now running things over there in the Meadowlands. This is a whole new era for Jets football. They have a big first round pick to make here, and based on our board, they probably have more options on the table than they may have originally thought.
yeah, I think this is actually exactly how they would want the draft board to fall for them. Looking at their roster, it's they have a pretty weak front seven. If you can see where I'm going with this pick. And so I think they end up pairing Quinn and Williams with Mason Graham here and stacking that front seven to get some pressure. You hope that Sauce Gardner has a bounce back year. DJ Reed may be gone, but you can fill that hole. If Sauce bounces back, you only really need a mid corner two, and a great front seven solves a lot of those DB problems if you can get pressure on the quarterback. And I think Mason Graham would be perfect paired next to Quentin Williams.
Yeah, the draft board falling perfectly to the Jets, how you phrase it. That's exactly what I see here with Graham. Could you also see a world where they go offensive tackle? This is a very big offensive line class. I mean, we got one going in the top 5 with Will Campbell going at 4 to the Patriots. If Mason Graham is not there, could you see them pivoting to tackle, or do they just go with an edge rusher? Do they go with another really good defensive lineman in this class?
So honestly, if that were the case, I don't think they do. I would think I think they're going to go Tyler Warren if they don't go. I'm in the Tyler Warren camp just because he's the Swiss Army knife. He's a
Yeah.
great blocker. So he's almost like a quasi tackle just because you can use him so frequently blocking. And then you also get the benefit of him running routes. So I would think they'd pivot to Tyler Warren. But again, I don't know. If they did go tackle, I do think they'd go with Membu just because he's freakishly athletic. And that's the kind of vibes I get. So.
Graham going at 7. You got the Panthers at 8. I'm going to say it. This is probably the least confident pick I have in the top 10. I don't know where Carolina's head's at. Honestly, if you didn't take Tet and if Tet was still on the board, I probably would have taken Tet here, but he's not. And I know that the Panthers need help for Bryce Young. They also need help getting to the quarterback. With that being said, going to go to the edge rushers. I'm going to take Jalen Walker. I know it's not a popular pick in the top 10, but at the same time, it's one of those where you said free agency will really tell the story with Carolina. I know I'm just talking pass catchers, Tyler Warren's there, but I'm not sure Carolina's in the position to, and I know he's a game changing tight end, but I feel like they have a lot more needs overall in their squad to address than tight end. Like I said, this when I realized I had evens, this was the pick I probably wasn't feeling super excited to have in the Panthers just because this is going to be a second year for Dave Canales. Bryce Young was benched last year, came back in and looked much better. He really needs a guy to throw the football to. Can't always be relying on Adam Thielen where he's at in his career. Jalen Walker's the pick. I don't love it. I know when we mock next time, he will not be the pick, but that's just where I have them going here.
Yeah, and this is probably controversial of me to even say. I do not think that Jalen Walker is even a first round talent. I don't have him, even in my top 40 on my big board. But a lot of people like him. I'm sure the NFL likes him because he can play edge and he can play a little bit of linebacker. So yeah, I mean, in like you mentioned, the Panthers, it's such a weird team to draft for. You could have taken probably any of the guys that has listed from 8 to 15, and they all would have been possible picks there. And that's exactly how I feel about this next pick with New Orleans. We were joking about the Giants pick being the tough pick, the Saints pick for me. I have no clue what these NFC South teams are thinking. Part of me wants to say that they're going to take Ashton Genty. I know it makes no sense that they just paid Kamara, so not going to do that. But I truly do see a world where they do end up going Genty. I honestly think they end up going edge here as well. And I think they overdraft James Pierce here and take James Pierce in the top 10.
That's interesting. When I was doing so for reference this morning, when I was just doing a general first round mock, trying to get my feet wet, seeing where certain people had, these guys going. I was tough with the Saints as well. I found myself more oftentimes than not putting Tyler Warren in that spot, but they're also not necessarily the team that is in a position to draft a guy like Tyler Warren with all the other overall needs they have on their roster. It is interesting. These 8-9 spots you mentioned, JP, both NFC South squads. We really don't have a good hunch feeling on where they're leaning. And that leads us here to the 10th pick. Our Chicago Bears. We're going to have a lot to say about this. They've done a good job in the trade market addressing the interior offensive line this week. Back-to-back days, they managed to make moves with the Rams for Jonah Jackson, and they managed to bring in four-time All-Pro Joe Thuney. Because of this, I think we're going to go out and finalize the offensive line. I hope we do in free agency. Any center on the market. I know Drew Dahlman is the gem right now to go get, and Ryan Kelly's out there, and he's great as well. I hope they finalize the offensive line. It creates flexibility for this first round pick. It allows Ben Johnson to have some fun along with Ryan Poles. And because of that, I'm having Ashton Genty be the pick to Chicago at 10. This would be electrifying. I mean, there's no other way to put this. And this was at the combine, and they were talking, all the analysts on NFL Network, and they said, we don't love taking guys this high, at those guys being running backs. But if you are a team who has an established offensive line and they're ready to roll right away, you see the value. JP, I know you're also in the Genty camp right now at 10 based on what the Bears have done this past week. I want to get your thoughts on this pick.
Yeah, no. I was skeptical about it. Since the offseason has ended, we've joked or began, sorry, since the offseason has began for the Bears, which was a long time ago. We've joked that Genty's going to end up being a Bear. Genty's going to end up being a Bear. It makes no sense. Genty's going to end up being a Bear before we even knew Ben Johnson was going to be a Bear, and now it looks like it's actually going to be true. And going out and getting Jonah Jackson, who surprisingly has good PFF grades, and then trading for arguably a top 3 guard in Thuney there is absolutely electric. And now I'm fully behind the Genty pick. Makes the offense so dynamic, and it'll really be an exciting pick. I think there'll be a lot of buzz, a lot of hype, and that's something where we go through this cycle every offseason about offseason hype, and this is the first time I think it'll actually be warranted. So fully agree with the pick.
Love it. Bear down as always. It'll be interesting when we do another segment, another edition of this. We're going to try, I'm assuming, when we do multiple mock drafts. Obviously, the next one's going to be post free agency. So there will definitely be shuffling. With the Bears, I really find it hard to believe. We might mix in an O lineman, but man, or a trade down when we get some trades involved. But it's hard to imagine anything else right now for the Bears unless Genty goes before 10. If he goes before 10, well, then there's going to be some pivoting done there. San Francisco at 11. JP, this will be an interesting pick. The Niners picking this high for the first time in quite a while. We know that Nick Bosa was cut by the Chargers this past week, and there is a need at edge for San Fran, but there's a very realistic possibility that Nick and Joey could get paired up. Or I should say Joey Bosa got cut by the Chargers, Nick Bosa on San Francisco. Very real possibility they could end up together. So maybe not edge for San Fran at 11, but can you rely on the new Bosa coming in to stay healthy? That's been an issue in his career. We know they could be looking for some offensive line help. Trent Williams isn't going to be around forever. Where do you have them going here at 11?
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth with the Bosa thing. If you asked me 3 days ago, I would have said this is either Mike Green or Will Johnson. But now I'm fully on board that they're going to end up going with Membu or Simmons. I'm really not entirely sure. So I think they're going to play it safe and go with the guy who we know for sure is healthy now in Membu. But I did just see something saying that Simmons is hosting his own pro day because he's
All
way
right.
ahead of schedule. So a little bit after Ohio State does their pro day, Simmons is going to have his own pro day, and that could be a huge telltale and could significantly boost his draft stock because quite frankly, if Simmons was fully healthy, I think I'd have him as the top lineman in the class. And I think this injury is the only thing lingering for him. But I do think they end up going Membu here.
Yeah, we're going to save the Josh Simmons dialogue, or at least on my end, for when he actually goes. But I do agree. This is a conversation you and I have also had. We both are very high on Josh Simmons. The injury against Oregon, that was tough. And we knew that was going to hurt him down the stretch in the draft. I like the tackle pick here. Makes all the sense in the world for San Francisco. I'm going to have some fun here with Dallas at 12. I've only because I've seen this, and I've the fact that I've seen this and I've seen that they like this guy. Do I think it's what they should necessarily do? No, but it's have to. So keep in
I know
mind
where
here
you're going.
with mock drafts, you know where I'm going, and like kind of with that Carolina pick, JP doesn't have Jalen Walker in his top 40. I have him ranked a little bit higher. Do I think he's a top 10 pick? Probably not, but you have to try and put yourself in the minds of these front offices and these coaching staffs where you think they may lean. Dallas is known for having some fun in the draft. JP and I really like this guy if it's the guy that he thinks I'm thinking about.
It's who I'm thinking about. We're
Yeah,
thinking of the
we
same guy.
we
I've already
really
selected him on my end.
yeah, we
I already
really
wrote him in
wanted
for you.
him before the Bears got Ashton Jennings, before we knew this offensive line stuff. We were messaging a lot. Can this guy get to the second round? We really, really like this guy. He's not going to get to the second round because Omarion Hampton's going to go to 12 to the Cowboys in this mock draft. JP, this guy's an absolute stud. Over 1,500 rushing yards in his last two seasons at North Carolina, at over 1,600 this past year, over 5 yards per carry. I mean, just a true workhorse back. Can really get beyond the first level and do it well. I love everything about this guy's game. I didn't watch a whole lot of him during the college season, really got into his tape postseason when things kind of wrapped up, and his combine was pretty damn impressive. So I'm a big Omarion Hampton fan, so much so that I have him going here at 12 to Dallas.
Yeah, fully can see the vision there. Love Hampton. I think I have him at 17th or 18th on my big board, so I'm fully on board with Hampton, and it's just such a Dallas pick going with Hampton. Not that there's anything wrong taking a running back that early. I just think Schottenheimer, his dad is like known for being one of the biggest run heavy coaches in NFL history, and I'm sure some of that is rubbed off on Schottenheimer, and so I think they're going to want to run the ball, and I fully agree with the Hampton pick. I love Hampton. He's an absolute beast. I remember me and my roommate sitting there watching their first game of the season against Minnesota, and he had like 32 carries for only like 100. I mean, only like 120 yards, and we're like, I mean, every single play, Hampton is catching a pass or they're throwing him a swing or a pitch, and I'm like, they're gonna kill this guy before we even get to the NFL season. And I had him ranked third over the summer. Now I have him ranked second behind Jincy, obviously. But yeah, no, I absolutely love Hampton. Been a big fan of Hampton and love this pick for Dallas.
So I do have to ask, and this is the media side and me having to play this devil's advocate, but I really, and I'm making it known, I love Omarion Hampton. I really do. He has around 600 carries, if not over 600 carries, in just 3 years of college football as the bell cow back. And this is such a give and take situation, right? Because you want to see a guy dominate with a good workload at the college level because that means, hey, we know we can handle it at the NFL level in an NFL scheme. But there might not be as much tread on those tires compared to other backs. We saw this with both Texas running backs going in the 2023 draft with Bijan and our guy Roschon Johnson here in Chicago. Everyone was saying, "Oh, Bijan's the better talent," but Roschon Johnson being his backup, he will be way fresher, way longer. Does that bother you at all that Hampton has gotten this much of a workload? You even kind of talked about it too with his involvement in the passing game.
Yeah, I mean, it worries me to the point where it's something you think about, but not something you consider. You plan for it, and I just sent something to my group chat about Rico Dowdle probably getting extended by Dallas and receiving a significantly higher pay than I would have thought he was going to receive. And so that's what you do. You bring in someone who, I mean, Rico Dowdle was fine as a starter this year, nothing crazy. Got over 1,000 yards. Although I did say in that chat that 1,000 yards does not mean anything
No,
anymore.
I was gonna say
Uh,
that's probably the quietest 1,000 yard season ever because I thought he was
yeah.
pretty hard to watch at times
Oh
this year.
yeah. Oh, I thought the same thing. And then I went and looked at his game log, his box scores as well, and I think he had like a game with 149 yards, or it was 104, whatever. My point being though is that Hampton, the injury history isn't there. Sure, the workload is, but the injury history is not there. You pair him with a second running back who can come in. Dowdle could start for 3 games if you lose Hampton to too much. He's getting too many carries. He's banged up, whatever. But a player like that, it's like not saying he's on the same level of Bijan, but he's right there truly. And you ignore the injury history for the talent.
A true game changer in Hampton. We head to Miami at 13. Another interesting pick. See what they do in free agency. Some saying the secondary is a big need for the Dolphins. JP, do you have them attacking and approaching the secondary here in the first round, or you have them leaning elsewhere?
So I have them leaning elsewhere. Typically, in my own personal mocks, I've had them going with either Banks, Membu, or Simmons. But in the event that Membu was gone, I have them trade down and then go with Simmons and or Banks. But seeing as where they are right now, I actually like Will Johnson going to them right now and helping out in the secondary. It's a weak secondary, and Jalen Ramsey, with what little value he has left, I would imagine gets dealt this year to an actual contender. And then I'm sure that contract's going to get restructured. And so they're going to need big time secondary help, especially when Mike McDaniel, unfortunately, is going to lose his job at the end of the year. Not for anything he's done. I think he's a great coach. I just think they're going to want turnover and he'll get a job immediately. So, yeah, I bet they go Will Johnson here. I think it just makes sense. He is my top corner in the class. I have him ranked over Travis Hunter as a corner, only because if Hunter actually declared a position,
Yeah,
I'd declare Hunter as my best corner, but going both ways, I just don't know how you can be that fresh or not be that fresh and be the top corner. Will Johnson's an absolute beast. His 2023 tape was much better than his 2024 tape. But granted, he was playing injured a lot of 2024. But I absolutely love Will Johnson. I have him at 6 on my big board. So
I love Will Johnson so much that he was my plan for Indy at 14. So things will get a bit interesting here. It's a great pick. As a Michigan State football fan, I mean, I watch what I can of the Spartans for football. I do other stuff on Saturdays in my own work, so it's not always the first thing I'm able to get to do. I watched the Michigan games throughout his career when we played him. You can't throw the ball the guy's way. He is a true lockdown. That's for him. He's a game wrecker in the secondary. By far, like JP said, it's tough with Hunter not declaring a position to figure out who's the best where. And because of that, he's the best pure corner in this class. If, like you said, if Travis Hunter said, I'm only going to be a DB in the NFL, obviously it's him. But because of that, this is where we are. It's a great pick for Miami. I know they have a need at safety as well, but this is a class. You got guys like Xavier Watts from Notre Dame. You can probably find in the second day. There are other ways you can approach safety position. We also have free agency coming up. Like I said, this is all contingent on us knowing nothing about what's going to happen next week. Like I said, creates a pretty awkward situation here. For me at 14, my plan was Johnson all along. Gonna have to pivot. I could see a world where Indy trades down here. I really could. But if we're staying in the world where they hang tight, this is just one of those best player on the board situations. I'm going to have them take Tyler Warren here. For a guy of his talent and for how great he is, it's crazy that he fell to the 14th pick. But JP, I feel like this is a draft where he's good enough to go in the first half of the first round. We just don't necessarily have a perfect spot for him. There isn't an ideal situation in the first half of the first round, in my opinion, for a guy like.
no, and I fully agree with that. I think what will more than likely happen is our mocks, everyone's mocks, will be completely off. I think a team's going to overdraft him, expecting to get Brock Bowers when they're completely different players. That comparison drives me insane. I cannot express how badly that comparison drives me nuts. Warren is a Swiss Army knife, yes, but Bowers is a receiver who blocks every now and then. Warren is probably going to only have like 650 receiving yards, uh, probably 6 touchdowns, but everyone's going to expect him to come in because Bowers just went absolutely insane at the tight end position. And I think they're drastically different players. Although I do love Tyler Warren, him and
Yeah.
Loveland, I think they're both in my top 20 on my big board. I keep going back and forth on them at 1 and 2 at the actual position. I think the only reason that's happening is because I'm getting so burnt out on all the Tyler Warren hype that I'm convincing myself Loveland is better. But Tyler Warren's an absolute freaking beast, and I think for them to complete like the offense, it would make sense for them to take Tyler Warren there. So have no issues with that pick at all.
Warren going 14. We hit Atlanta at 15, a team that was a win away from the division title this past year and making the playoffs. I'm interested to see where you have them go here at 15, JP. In my eyes, though, they have a pretty glaring need that they need to address.
Yeah, that need, in my opinion, is edge. And I think that they go with the second best edge in this class, Mr. 17 sacks himself, Mike Green. That's just what I see happening, only because I think he's the best edge. Now, what I think Atlanta would more than likely do in this spot is go with Shamar Stewart, but I'm not about drafting him there. I want to keep it to what I think uh, they should do in this pick, and I think they should take Mike Green. I think they're going to fall in love with the size and potential of Shamar Stewart, just like I think a lot of teams are. But his production has never been there. And the only trouble with Mike Green is he's got character issues coming out. The only thing you could say is you hope he grew up and matured a little bit as he got older in college, because that was a freshman year thing for him, whatever that means. But Mike Green is a freaking beast. 17 sacks. I don't care if you're playing at West Lafayette University. I don't care where you're playing. 17
Yeah.
sacks is 17 sacks. And Mike Green is a beast. He tore it up at the Senior Bowl so much where he got to sit out the actual game and the last day of practice. Mike Green's a beast, and I love the fit for Atlanta.
Yeah, edge was exactly where I was thinking too. They need help getting to the quarterback pretty badly. And the way the board shakes out for Atlanta, like you said, they had more than just in as you acting as the front office of Falcons, you had more than just Mike Green to work with here. Michael Williams was out there as well as you mentioned, along with Stewart, who had a really good combine, but I agree with your take on him. I not as much game film. It's game film is important. I don't know how you are. We've had this conversation about combine and all these other things. Everything is important in this draft process. The combine is important. The interviews are extremely important with these front offices and coaching staffs that you do while you're in Indy. Those matter. If you have a pro day, how you show out there matters. But to me, I'm a big tape guy. I know it sounds old school. I know I sound like, old man yelling at clouds right now, but listen, I've watched your tape, watching you play the game. How are you going about it? 17 sacks is absurd. I didn't know much about Mike Green. I'll be honest. At the end of the season, and I really first got wind of him at the Senior Bowl, and I was doing a report for the site that I write for, and I go to find his stats from the year, and I see 17 sacks, and I'm like, this guy should have been on my radar to begin with. Being at a school like Marshall doesn't help his case. Obviously, people who actually do this for a living, other scouts had him there way earlier, way before. You put together the physical traits that he has. He looked amazing at the Senior Bowl with 17 sacks, all the sense in the world. I know there's like you said, the reports going on about him right now, and we're not shaking those off. Those matter. Obviously, that's a part of character, but these front offices, they will talk to everyone in these guys' lives. They will talk to coaches, players, family, friends. They'll do their research on these reports. If there's anything we've learned about today's day and age about stuff that happens off the field, these front offices are they know more than we ever will as I'll call us media, but as media, as people who analyze drafts and prospects, they know more than we do about the guy as a person. JP and I don't know Mike Green personally. None of us do, except for the people who have actually met with him and those, in his life. So with that all being said, the talent is there if we're going on talent alone and what he brings to the table tape wise and what he did at the combine. I love that pick at 15. We're going to go to our intermission midway through the first round. After this pick at 16 for the Cardinals, I have them going a little bit off the beaten path, maybe to some, but I think this position for them is a big need. The interior defensive line, I'm going to have them take Walter Nolan out of Ole Miss. I know it's like we keep having these offensive linemen slide, but I really do think they need that help up front. Nolan, I've seen him go in the teens. I've seen him go in the 20s. JP, we get guys like this every year they kind of have a 12 pick radius that they could go between. I just feel like the fit here makes sense for Nolan to go to Arizona.
Yeah, and I think the difference between the teen and the 20s is your preference Nolan or is your preference Grant? If your preference is Grant, you have Grant going to Arizona or Cincinnati, and you have Nolan going a little bit later in the 20s. I'm a Grant guy, so I would have literally had it flip flop, but I have no issues with Nolan. I think Grant and Nolan, I think I have them back to back on my big board. And so I have zero issues with either of them. They're both studs. Nolan's getting better and better, especially after his great combine. And it's just one of those feelings. Like after seeing the stuff with him and Aaron Donald, it's just like one of those feelings where like he's gonna want to play to earn it. And he's a traitsy guy. He's quick, he's fast, and he's big. And so it is weirdly similar to an Aaron Donald situation where he's not super tall, but he's super fast and he's huge for his height. And so that's a guy you want to have. And I agree with you. I think Arizona will a lot. Everyone's mocking Arizona to take offensive linemen, and I don't see that vision at all. They need defensive line bad, and I think Nolan is the perfect pick for Gannon's system. If you look at the kind of D tackles they used to have in Philly.
So we have our first half done. We'll recap this and we'll take a quick break before joining you back for the second half, the first round pick 17 through 32. It's basically assumed we won't do trades in this go around. We'll keep it straight and simple. Next time we'll come back post free agency. We'll have some trades planned out on this beforehand so you all can see that as it goes. We have Abdul Carter going 1 to Tennessee. We have Cam Ward, the top quarterback in the class, going 2 to Cleveland. Travis Hunter at 3 to New York. Will Campbell at 4. Some offensive line help for Drake May in New England. Ted McMillan, JP having the odd picks, myself having the even picks. JP sees the new offense in Jacksonville. Liam Cohen and company really ripping it down and rebuilding up this roster. It'll be McMillan and Brian Thomas Jr., which would be a lot of fun. I had to hop in and make sure that Vegas got their quarterback in Shadur Sanders at 6. Mason Graham would be a fantastic addition to the interior defensive line of the New York Jets going at 7. Probably one of the more controversial picks we had as the edge rusher from Georgia, Jalen Walker, a guy who can kind of play all over the place in the second level. I had him going at 8. James Pierce Jr. at 9, another edge rusher to New Orleans. Our Chicago Bears selecting Ashton Jenney at number 10 out of Boise State, hopefully playing with one more new offensive lineman, snapping the football to Caleb Williams in a brand new Ben Johnson system. We have Membu out of Missouri at the offensive tackle. Armand Membu going at 11 to San Francisco, looking for some guys for the future. Another fun pick for the Cowboys at 12 in Omarion Hampton, the stud running back out of North Carolina. Miami getting the best corner in the class, best pure corner, and Will Johnson out of Michigan at 13. Tyler Warren, the Colts getting the best player on the board at their slot at 14 out of Penn State. And then some defensive linemen at 15 and 16 to close it out. Mike Green out of Marshall and Walter Nolan out of Ole Miss. We'll be back for the second half of the first round, pick 17 through 32 next here on the Just Beavin Mock Draft 1.0 edition. We'll be back.
I like the way that sounds.
Part 2, picks 17 through 32 coming your way right now. This picks up with JP on the clock, Cincinnati at 17. I'll lead into it, see if this is the spot you're going to go with here. Trey Hendrickson, all-pro pass rusher, officially requesting a trade yesterday. Do we see the Bengals trying to replace him here at 17, JP, or is there a different avenue that their front office will go for?
I think they're going to go a different avenue. While I could 100% see them taking an edge here, I do not believe that's the route they're going to go. Instead, I think that they are going to go with my 11th ranked player in Kenneth Grant. I think they address the interior of the line because their run defense has been so bad. I think they get a top 15 player in the class in Kenneth Grant. He's an absolute beast. I don't think I've seen arguments that he was a product of playing next to Mason Graham. And I think you could say the same thing about Mason Graham in that respect. I think Kenneth Grant is a great individual player, and Cincinnati will be getting a long time starter in Kenneth Grant. He's an absolute beast.
Once again, a Michigan guy, so I got some familiarity with watching his game. Michigan not having as great of a season coming off the national championship, but man, let me tell you, you weren't going to run the football too well against them having Graham and Grant on the inside. I like that pick for the Bengals. This leads me to my next pick at 18 with Seattle. I'm going to get to have some fun with this one. We both really like this guy as well. I know interior O-line is a need for Seattle. They've gotten 2 great tackles in Lucas and Charles Cross. I'm blanking. They both got them in the same draft. I could see them going to the interior O-line and taking our guy Tyler Booker here at 18 out of Alabama. Another guy, I think very similar to Walter Nolan, not in terms of their play, obviously on different sides of the ball. I've seen Booker go in the teens. I've seen him go in the 20s. I've seen him out of the first round. Those, I'm not too sure about out of the first round. I feel like Tyler Booker has played himself into being a first-round draft choice. It might not be with Seattle, but I see the fit here. And a lot of times it's fit that is important over everything, not always BPA. And I could see him working with the Seahawks.
Yeah, I think that makes it makes total sense. I've seen it's either you have Booker going to Seattle or I've seen Gray Zabel going to Seattle. But I agree with you. I think I don't see a world where either of them make it out of the first round. Otherwise, someone I would guarantee trades up to snag Booker early in the second if Cleveland doesn't take him at 33. So agree with the pick completely.
The only thing I guess I'm thinking about this now after I've made the draft choice is wide receiver could also be a position the Seahawks go after and approach as
Yeah,
well.
see, that didn't even cross my mind until you
Yeah,
brought it up. Yeah,
yeah,
I completely forgot DK requested.
and it just came to my brain. They could very well go that here as well. Hey, that's why it's great. There's a mock draft, and we're going to hope to do multiple of these. So we could have them going receiver next go around. But in my brain, it has been Tyler Booker to Seattle. Uh, when I've known my mocks the last couple of days, I'm happy that I got the even picks in this draft. So that's what we're going to have them lean here. I'm really interested to see what you do with Tampa here at 19, coming off a brutal home playoff loss to Washington. They're in the top 20 as a team that has some promise. There is we like what they have. It's going to be tough for Baker Mayfield playing now with his third OC in the last 3 seasons. Tampa Bay, do they go offense or defense?
I think personally they go defense. Now, if I was the Tampa Bay GM here, I would be taking Jahdae Barrett, but I believe they're going to take Jahad Campbell, linebacker from Alabama, with this pick. I just think it's something that Todd Bowles likes. He likes his quick linebackers who can also put pressure on quarterbacks. And I'm not sure how much if Todd Bowles is going to get an unlimited run there. I mean, granted they've won the division, but are we really celebrating 9-8 division winners? I don't know how much stake. Now, saving grace, they did beat or they did win a playoff game last year, as in 2023. But they lose to a rookie quarterback who they beat previously in the season by 18 in the first round of this year's playoffs in Washington. So I think that they go with Jahad Campbell in this spot. It just makes sense as a Todd Bowles player. And yeah, I honestly I would love for them to take Jahdae Barrett. I think Jahdae Barrett's a top 12 player in this class, but I see them going Jahad Campbell.
So for me with Tampa, I either have them going edge or I also have them going at the linebacker spot. As you see, this is NFL mock draft database simulators you see us using. Their rankings have it shown that Campbell is the only linebacker worth a first round consideration. We've had classes like this in the past. I want to say it was last year with safety, if not the year before, where there was one, bona fide first round pick. Everyone else definitely day 2 or later. Similar thing here with linebacker, and obviously Alabama's got a good pedigree of pumping out these linebackers. Tampa Bay's linebacking core getting a bit older, and they're going to have guys ready to roll from day one. That's what these first round picks obviously are for. Campbell being a guy who can go in the top 20, I think Tampa Bay is the best spot for him as well here in the first round. With Denver at 20, we haven't had a receiver go off the board in quite some time. I'm going to have that be a change right here. And when you look at the guys, these three, Burden, Egbuka, and Golden, I think all three are worthy of being first round picks based on what they've put out. I know people have differing opinions. And I'm not just doing this because he's the top ranked guy out of the three that's on my list in front of me. I'm a huge Luther Burden fan. Missouri is going to get 2 guys taken inside the top 20 of this draft based on how we have it here. Luther Burden is the pick here for me to Denver for Bo Nix entering a second season under Sean Payton. He was fantastic as a rookie, outplayed expectations, JP. And I think having a guy like Burden on the outside to help him out will be huge entering year 2 to hopefully avoid a sophomore slump.
Yeah, I have Burden as my wide receiver 3. I have him 15th on my big board, and Denver needs help big time at the receiver position. I'm not bought in on Devon Vele. Troy Franklin looked horrible as a rookie outside of that first touchdown catch against Buffalo in the playoffs, where it looked like might have been the greatest first drive in the entire playoffs, just for them to get blown out. But yeah, they need wide receiver help bad. I'm not bought in at all that Burden was just a 2023 guy. Granted, his production was down, but his tape was perfectly fine. Brady
Yeah.
Cook is a terrible quarterback. I don't even care that he looked decent at the combine. He was thrown to ghosts. That he was a horrible college quarterback. Luther Burden is a stud. I mean, if right now we were having this conversation a year ago and we were projecting the future, we'd be talking about how Burden's in play for a top 5 pick. Now he's all the way down at 20 because of a down year by bad quarterback play. This is a steal for Denver, and I love Luther Burton. Love this pick.
Yeah, I have him as my number 2 receiver based on what we have here. Tet going way earlier in the draft. JP had him going 5. Yeah, 5. 5. Right. I think 5. Yeah, to Jacksonville.
Five.
So
Yep.
we get a 15 pick drop off before we get to our next spot here with Burden at 20. Pittsburgh at 21. It always seems like they're in this range of pick 20 to pick 25 in every single draft. They're here again, JP. Plenty of good talent on the board still. Do we see another receiver being added to this room next to George Pickens? Do they need that guy? I know it's a very trendy pick in other mock drafts to have them go wide receiver. Are you following that trend here?
I am following that trend here. I've been back and forth. So in some spots I've given Denver Loveland, and I've given Pittsburgh Burden. In others, I've given Dallas Burden and Pittsburgh Egbuka. But I've come around to a different viewing. And while I consider George Pickens a vertical threat as in he runs deep routes and you throw it up to him and he catches it, I think they need a field stretcher. And after the recent combine performance, I would say it's almost a guarantee that he's making it out in the first round. And not only the first round, in the top 21 picks. And so I'm going Matthew Golden here. I think they go Golden because they need a burner. Although I think Egbuka is the better receiver. I do. I think they go with Golden, and I think he'll fit into this offense perfectly, as in a positional need. Granted, Arthur Smith only ever runs one receiver offenses, but I think Golden is a perfect fit here, regardless of who trots out there at quarterback for them.
Yeah, I have Pittsburgh going receiver too, no matter who it is. I've seen a ton of Emeka Egbuka to Pittsburgh, like you said. This stretch right here with these 3 teams, I'm going to leak it right now. I'm having the Chargers take a pass
Yep.
catcher as well. We had this. I'm not sure what year this was. This was the JSN draft, whatever year that was, 23.
Yeah, 23.
Where it was they rattled off 3 straight pass catchers in that stretch. I think we're going to get the same thing here if these 3 picks hold, with Denver at 20, Pittsburgh at 21, and the Chargers at 22. So I like that for the Steelers, getting a guy like Golden. You mentioned having the vertical threat downfield. We'll see who the quarterback is. We don't know. This free agency this next week, post mock, this mock draft 2.0, we'll be able to determine that a bit more. But I like them going receiver. I think they need to do that. I'm torn here at 22 with the Chargers. Now that Egbuka is still on the board, I know they went Ladd McConkey in the second round last year to help out Justin Herbert. I also really do like Colston Loveland here at 22. It's like the first time we're not making we're making a decision right away. I'm just saying these are the 2 options I'm down to. I could see either one really going in this spot. Loveland being NFL mock draft database is 23rd ranked guy, Egbuka being 27. I am going to have the Chargers take tight end here, though, and go with Colston Loveland. This is the 3rd Michigan Wolverine to go in the first round. I could very realistically see it being the Chargers also going wide receiver and keeping that train moving. But I feel like last year they were looking to get a tight end in the draft as well, and it just didn't work out for them in that way. They're not going to miss out on a tight end this year. They're going to get one of the best in all of college football from a season ago.
Yeah, I completely agree on the pass catching front. They're 100% going with a pass catcher in this spot. And I think the Loveland fit not only because they need a tight end, and he can play kind of that Kincaid role where it's like a quasi tight end, like receiver tight end. He's 6'5", A, and he played for John Harbaugh at Michigan, B, which I think is a very important detail here. I know it meant nothing, but they took a swing on, man, what was his name? Johnson. I just know Cornelius Johnson last year in like the 5th or the 6th round. And in most drafts, no one even had him getting drafted. They go out and they bring in Hassan Haskins. I just think there's all these links to John Harbaugh where John Harbaugh knows the characters of the guys he's coached, and he's willing to take chances on them. And he's been very outspoken about guys from that 2023 team. I mean, how couldn't you be? That team was insanely good. And I think that kind of locks in Loveland going at 22.
Yeah, another connection, like you said, Harbaugh, that helps everything. And that's certainly something that would go into that. I can't believe I didn't even mention that when I made the Loveland pick. Unfortunately for you, JP, you have to make the pick for our hated rival, the Green Bay Packers. They're always a weird team in the first round, arguably always the weirdest team every year in the first round. They haven't taken a receiver in round 1, not that they've needed to in certain years, but I believe since the year 2000, if not earlier. They always take, it was last year, Jordan Morgan, if that name is correct, the alignment out of Arizona. And not that Jordan Morgan was a bad pick. Everyone was just like, Not sure if day one was the spot for him, nor Green Bay. So putting yourself in the shoes of their front office, are you going to try and take the weird route like we think they will, or are you going to play it straight like we think they should?
I'm going to play it how I think they will, and how I think they will is what I think they should. I think this ends the run on Jade Barron, and I think Barron goes here at 23. Alexander's out, and that secondary, I'm just going to be blunt, that secondary sucks. It's a bad secondary. They're going to need help. And Jade Barron, not only as a player, the tape is phenomenal. He can play safety, he can play nickel, he can play anywhere in the secondary. And on top of it, his combine was masterful. I think this is a perfect fit, and it really pains me because Jahdae Barron is such a good player.
Yeah.
I've been doing every time I've mocked with them, it has pained me because I've given them, Siobhan Ravel, I've given them Benjamin Morrison, months ago when Morrison was still considered a first round prospect at that point, and now having to give him Jahdae Barron, it's just I feel like I'm almost like giving them better players than they deserve, but it's just the pick I think they're going to make here. Johnny Barron's a stud, so I mean, good for Green Bay, but yeah, Johnny Barron's a stud.
Yeah, that Alexander situation is interesting. We'll bite our tongues or whatever the saying is. We'll admit it. Good player when he's healthy, and
Great player.
we hate to play against him, obviously, but we also would hate for them to draft a guy like Jahdae Barron. I'm super high on him as well.
Yeah.
The Longhorns pumping out more first round talent, and yes, especially with everything going on in their own division. You look at the receiving group in Minnesota: Jefferson, Addison, even Hawkinson as a tight end. You look at Detroit, they got really good pass catchers and just really good offensive weapons. And us here in Chicago, we got something good brewing as well. So Green Bay, especially in their 6 divisional games every year, that secondary needs to be in tip-top shape. And adding a guy like Barron at 23 would be a huge get for their defense, not only heading into this season, but for the long haul. We get another divisional rival, the Bears, here at 24 in Minnesota. I also have Minnesota going the defensive back route, and I have them taking Malachi Starks out of Georgia. I know Nick Amanawari, definitely saying his name wrong, had a fantastic combine. The guy's an athletic freak, and he tested well. And I know Starks' tape wasn't as great this year as it was previous. He is still the best safety in this class, and I feel like the safety spot is where Minnesota needs help. I know they got guys back there who have been there for a very long time. But for me, it's always we talk about having to regroup and reload and prepare for the future as well. Stark's a great player, and Minnesota is getting a guy here at 24 that talent-wise could go a lot earlier, but safeties are very weird nowadays in the first round. They're the one defensive, pick besides a linebacker that you don't see a ton of them go in the first round. I think this is where you see the first and potentially only safety. I don't know, not trying to leak too much for what comes later, but this is the for sure safety, in my opinion, who goes in the first round in Malachi Starks.
Yeah, I fully agree with. I'm not even going to add anything. I agree with everything you just said. Top safety and all, and I do think he's the only one who goes in the first round as well.
Houston at 25. The receiving room, JP, is in shambles until yesterday, Thursday, when they traded for Christian Kirk for a 7th-round pick with the Jaguars. Stephon Diggs is a free agent. Tank Dell out for the season. Nico Collins is still a stud, but he missed some time this past year, so he's got to heal up this offseason, get to 100%. Does the trade for Kirk keep Houston from taking a receiver here, or do you still have them loading up, getting more weapons for CJ Stroud?
I think this is one of those picks I'm going to make where if I was them, what would I do? I see them because of Stroud being their quarterback. I think they go with Egbuka here. If Egbuka was on the clock, I think Stroud is on the phone with the GM, hammering the table for them to take Egbuka. What I think they should do, and what the pick I'm going to make, is they need interior offensive line help way more than they need Emeka Egbuka. I'm going with Gray Zabel here. He could play any of the guard spots, and he could play center. That's kind of versatility you literally rarely find anymore, especially when you're that good at all three. He absolutely dominated. We were talking about the Senior Bowl earlier. One of the guys who had a winning rep against Mike Green, and he was out at tackle where he's not even going to end up playing in the NFL. Gray Zabel's a stud, and they need a center and guards bad. So I think that pick makes way more sense.
Yeah, and like we talked about, Kirk, and not saying it isn't enough, but Collins and Kirk as your 1-2 is all right. You're going to get by with that.
One too.
Yeah, you got Dalton Schultz as well, and there's no saying you can't go get a receiver later on in the draft in the second day, or you can't go sign a guy in the market. This isn't a totally terrible free agent market for receivers. I just would say it's not a completely ideal one. I think that's the best way to describe it in this spot. Zabel makes a ton of sense for Houston at 25. With the Rams at 26, I'm going to stop the free fall for this guy. I'm going to take Calvin Banks here. That's who I have them taking on the offensive line. You definitely thought I was going to go Josh Simmons.
I did. I
Uh,
did.
but it's I literally either one of them. I think
Yeah. Yeah.
if the Rams are in this spot and both are available, they're probably looking around saying, "What do we do here?" It's tough. It's all on personal preference. Um, Unfortunately for Josh Simmons, you would see this is if you and I both really like Josh Simmons. I feel like teams are going to be more scared of his medicals come draft time than we think, which is unfortunate because he's a good talent. But I just think they're going to prioritize health. We always say health is wealth, and I think they're going to rely on a guy like Banks a lot more. I can't believe he's here at 26. I also can't believe Simmons is here at 26. But sometimes this is just how these drafts go. There's going to be fallers in every draft. It might not be these guys in the actual draft. It may be other guys that we've already taken, but we have honestly these three guys right here, Williams, Stewart, and Simmons, have all fallen along with Banks into the 20s. And I think there's every single year when we do or have the actual draft where we look and go, wow, these three guys made it out of the first round. I think last year one of those guys was Cooper DeJean, who ended up being a hero in the Super Bowl for Philadelphia. So that's what I have here. I have Banks going at 26. I know you thought Simmons, but you still agree that if there's good enough talent on the board, Los Angeles needs to go with the tackle.
Yeah, 100%. Especially after just dealing Jonah Jackson, who they dished out big money to, and he did not pay off. I mean, he was hurt. So say what you will, but they gave up on him after a year, and they paid him $25 million last year. I mean, it was a large investment to make to him. It did not pay off. And if they're going to keep Stafford healthy, because Stafford goes down the season, that entire
Yeah,
season is
it's done.
over. That entire season's over. So they're going to have to keep Stafford healthy. He's old, and I know he plays through a lot of injuries, but I think he missed what 3 games last year or 2 games last year. I could be wrong about that. He may not have missed any games last year, but for some reason I have it in my head. It might have been the year before. It definitely was the year before. I see it pictured in my head now. It's why they only won 5 games. But yeah, I mean the injury history, it's caught up to him, and so I think you got to keep him healthy. So either way, I think they're going with an offensive lineman here.
Do you have the train continuing with O line with the Ravens at 27, especially given what's still available?
Yeah, I'm gonna assume that they're losing Ronnie Staley into free agency, and now I'm stopping the slide on Simmons here. I think if he's even a hint of healthy at his pro day and he shows anything, yeah, just that he's healthy. I don't think there's a slide on him at all, and I see him going over Banks and probably over Membu as well. I love Simmons. Everything on tape is great that he's produced. He's an absolute beast and he's athletic. So I'm praying he can get healthy. If he falls all the way here to Baltimore,
They're going to be doing
yeah,
some
that's
cartwheels in their draft room.
yeah,
Yeah, they're going to be
yeah.
pretty excited. But yeah, I was looking at Banks and Simmons. I'm thinking JP and I are both going to probably stop this year relatively soon, and it makes all the sense in the world. Offensive line took the words right out of my mouth. With what they could be losing in free agency, this is probably a nightmare scenario for us once again as Bears fans. Depending on how you feel about either one of the edges that are available here at 28, we know Aiden Hutchinson for the Lions still coming off that gruesome injury from a season ago. They need pass rushing help. They need not only guys that can help now in Hutchinson's absence, they're always going to need guys to get to the quarterback when he returns. It's just about which guy you like better here. It will be Williams or Stewart. I'm going to have them take Michael Williams out of Georgia for their selection. And like I said, getting help to the quarterback is important. And you have mentioned this a ton in our group chat. I don't know why Aiden Hutchinson's running right now. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. He doesn't look comfortable running either. And I made the comparison for Chicago Bulls fans out there. It looks like Lonzo Ball, that video that came out of him running on the treadmill. 4 months from that terrible injury. Just relax, bro. We are in no rush. You shouldn't be in any rush. There are things that are more important. He never would have. I know the comment that came out, I'll be ready for the Super Bowl. He never would have been ready for the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So regardless, no matter how he's feeling, if he's ready to go right away, great. I don't advise that, but I'm not a doctor. So I guess what does my word mean? An edge, if there's a good one on the board, should definitely be the play for Detroit at 28.
Yeah, I fully agree there. I'm not a super big Michael Williams guy. I honestly am beyond confused how teams are seeing him as a first round prospect. But, that's also why they get paid to make these decisions. And I sit behind a screen and tell them why they're wrong. But I'm not a big Michael Williams fan. I don't even think I might have him exactly at 10 in my edge rankings. I'm
Would
not
you
a
have taken
super.
Stewart there instead, or would you not have? Would you have gone see who else is
I
even available? Scourton?
I I think they probably would have gone Shamar Stewart. And that's not even. I have Shamar Stewart ranked, I think, fifth or sixth for the edge. And I'm not even completely sold on him. That's more of just betting on ceiling. I'm just not. I don't know why. I'm just not a super big Michael Williams fan. He just doesn't see his package. He has a weak pass rush package, and that kind of scares me. It could just be because Georgia didn't really fully know how to use him, and that seems to be the case with Georgia edge rushers. They don't typically hit big in the NFL though, and that scares me a little bit. Kind of like the Ohio State quarterback thing. Just one of those things, I guess, a mental block. But yeah, no, I think they go edge regardless here. So I'm perfectly fine with the Michael Williams pick. It's just a preference pick. That is, I don't. I would actually be okay if they went with Michael Williams. That I'd probably celebrate that pick. So, but yeah, and so now moving on to Washington. This is a pick I've been most excited for since we said that I was doing the odds here because Egbuka is sitting right there. McLaurin's old, Debo's old. I mean, old. What is old anymore in the NFL? But they're both in their late 20s, and he's sitting right there, and they're not going to take Egbuka. Although
Wow,
I think it'd be
a
the
flair
smart
for the
thing.
dramatic.
I don't think they're going to. I think Shamar Stewart goes here. It just seems like such a Dan Quinn pick. You have a guy who's weighing in at 6'5" or standing at 6'5", weighing in the back half of 200 pounds. Just such a genetic freak that has Dan Quinn written all over him. He can play three tech, he can play four tech, he can play edge, tackle, wherever you need him. And I think that is such a Dan Quinn thing because Dan Quinn, if for those listening, if you guys remember, he was the one who started using safeties to come and play the linebacker position with that Legion of Boom team. I mean, Cam Chancellor was listed as a safety, but he was really coming up into the box. Jamal Adams, he moved that with Jamal Adams, all that stuff. He did it with Keanu Neal when he was in Atlanta, and he did it again with man, who was it? Oh, he brought Keanu Neal to Dallas and did it with Keanu
Yep.
Neal in Dallas as well. And then he used Jeremy Chin in that role in Washington last year. He just likes guys who can play all over the field, and I think that's Shamar Stewart. And so that's a pick I think really fits their defense.
Yeah, no, it's I like the it's tough with Egbuka right there, and
It
I mean
is.
honestly, with these last three teams we have here, I'm not trying to give too much away. Bills, Chiefs, Philly. This draft, our guy of how the heck did he get out of the first round might be Emeka Egbuka, based on what we have going on. Buffalo at 30, it's a tough spot. I can see them going secondary or edge. If you see what I've clicked on the screen, I have them going secondary. Ironically, I had Malachi Starks going 24 to Minnesota. I would like Starks here at 30 for Buffalo, but he's off the board. So they're going to go for the next best thing in Nick Manowari out of South Carolina. I still do like Starks better, but it's hard to ignore the physical traits and what Emmanuel displayed at the combine in Indy. Was he the guy who ran a sub 4.3 if my memory serves correct, or was that
He
someone else?
was. I believe
Yeah,
that was him.
I mean just wicked stuff. And when you get put on a defensive system and you get put around players as strong as what Buffalo has, it's only going to make them better. I know Elam, the cornerback that they took a few years ago out of Florida in late in the first round, he didn't really pan out too well for him. So I know they have a history of going for guys like this, guys with high upside from SEC schools out of the secondary. And I think they're hoping that a guy like Emmanuel would be a different result here at 30. This is a tough spot. It's harder to pick for these type of teams in the first round. These last three teams, these teams have everything. It's hard to find something. I mean, they're not everyone's perfect. You always need spots to upgrade on the roster, but for guys going in 30, 31, 32, not they're essentially second round picks because they're not, but these guys aren't going to be as much of contributors, maybe not necessarily off the jump as guys that go earlier in the 20s. These guys are going to be more rotational. They work in unless there's a big injury. It's harder to get these picks down at the back end unless there's just a glaring need like wide receiver or something. So that's where I have Buffalo going. Amanda Worry. I don't know if you're leaning secondary or edge. It's hard to for me. It's hard to go for a team like this.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. And I'm up next with the Chiefs. And as we were going to transition, I was going to say that I take back everything I said about New Orleans, and the Chiefs are actually my hardest pick because I have no idea. Like you said, all those positions, they're good players. I mean, you can always have better, but yeah, they're good players. So these are hard to address, especially when because we don't know free agency, and I don't know what the Chiefs are thinking, and you don't know what the Bills are thinking. Maybe they think that Roswell Douglas is not going to, be someone long term in their future, and they go corner here. But their safeties are not very good, and Micah Hyde officially retired. Poyer's no longer there, so now they're rolling with Taylor Rapp and Damar Hamlin. And I mean, no offense to Damar Hamlin, but he's just not that good of a player. Like he's not. I'm sorry, he's just not that good of a player. And so going with the Ori, because Rapp's a fine safety. I mean,
He's a bit older though, no?
Rapp is a little bit older, but he's not super old. And Rapp started on a team that won the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So I mean, Rapp is a good enough player to start and win a Super Bowl. Damar Hamlin is not, and you can take a Ori who's a genetic freak, literally a genetic freak, and throw him back there. And I love that pick, honestly. I wasn't leaning safety, and I even mentioned earlier that I would not take another safety in the first, but you taking him in Buffalo makes a lot of sense to me, and I really like that pick.
We have the defending AFC champions denied of a three-peat. You mentioned this is a tough spot. Where do you have Kansas City going?
Yeah, I'm all over the board right now. I'm looking at, do I draft what they need, what's going to help them win now, or what's going to steady them? So I love Josh Connerly. I have Connerly ranked as my fourth tackle, ahead of Calvin Banks. I love Josh Connerly, so I'm leaning Connerly. But then I'm thinking, all right, do they go long term and think when Chris Jones retires, are they looking for his replacement and bring in someone that'll help them win now and it'll carry over to the future? Or are they going strictly win now, in which I think, and the pick I'm going to make is Darius Alexander. Now, Darius Alexander, yes, he's a rookie, but I think the problem with him is he's older. I believe when he plays his first NFL game, he'll be 25, getting ready to turn 26. And so that's kind of on the older side. You really only get one prime contract out of him. But if you bring him in right now, he's impacting from day one, and him and Chris Jones will literally be unstoppable. And I think that's something that you can 100% ignore, considering your window to win a Super Bowl is not saying it's right now, but 4 years from now, Mahomes will be 33, and I'm not saying he's falling off. That's not at all. I still think he's best quarterback in the league. But if this year was kind of a telltale sign of anything, he didn't look that great. And so, I mean, it's definitely something you got to keep in the back of your head. But I'm going with Darius Alexander.
And you mentioned it with him being 25, 26, that those prime years, you're going to get that in his rookie contract. It's important to note as well. And then when he hits free agency, if you really like him, you're going to hit him with the argument, hey, you're 30, you're 30, 31. We'll bring it back, but you can get him for X instead of Y. So I like that. I like that philosophy. I think so. When we talk about the win now teams, yes, you go for a project guy, or you take an immediate guy like this, who his best years you're going to get on a really cheap contract, because that's a problem for teams like Kansas City and others. You're paying your stars so much money, you have to really. People don't understand. Not only is it hard for the good teams to nail the draft, it's equally as important because they have less margin for error. If they mess up on a pick, man, well, we just can't go throw money at the problem and replace it because our money's already there. We have to get these draft picks. These rookie contracts are so important for teams like that. And that is a decision that you described that with Jones. Oof, that would be a pretty tough run defense to go up in front of and play against. Philly at 32. What do the defending Super Bowl champions need? This
Literally
roster
nothing.
is still absurd. Literally nothing. I'm going to go on the offensive line, and this is me banking on Mekhi Becton getting stupid money from somebody else. Now, I realistically think Mekhi Becton will be back in Philly next year. If he is, well, then this pick can be disregarded, and this will change in our next mock draft post free agency. But we're going to assume that he doesn't get back with Philadelphia, and because of that, I'll have them take Donovan Jackson out of Ohio State to round out the first round. I could have gone tackle Connerly. I really like him as well. Lane Johnson's not getting any younger, but I feel like because we don't know what Mekhi Becton's future is, has to be, the guy you go with here, JP. I don't know your thoughts as we have our full first round, but with Philly, you said, what do they need? What does the thought of another interior offensive lineman mean for them to you?
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly what you said. It's all predicated on if Mekhi Becton is in Philly, that's a completely different pick. If Mekhi Becton's out of Philly, there's a world where Tyler Booker falls there. There's a world where
Yeah.
Zabel falls there. And so, I mean, I think regardless, if Becton's gone, that pick is some form of lineman anyways. So I have no issues with that last pick there. One I thought would be interesting though is, and I've seen it mock, not that mock, but I've seen them mock taking receiver there. And so
Ooh,
just on that, yeah,
Egbuka.
just adding Egbuka into that, yeah, would be absolutely insane. But I think this Super Bowl kind of proved to them that you can have, I mean, I was gonna say mid receivers, but what mid receivers, but you could have, a bad wide receiver three if you have the best offensive line in the league, especially when you have two top 30 receivers.
And
So yeah,
Saquon Barkley's running the football. That helps too.
and you have
It,
Jalen Hurts throwing the ball. Not that he's a good quarterback, but he adds to the rushing element. I mean, he just set the record for most rushing yards by a quarterback in the Super Bowl. But yeah, no, interior line's the pick there. So perfect end of that.
there you have it. We will sign off here momentarily. We do get to reflect, JP. Not going to read off every pick, but for you, I'll let you go through this. Anything that stands out as we will go by eighths. So every 1 through 8. So we'll do 1 through 8 here. Having Carter and Ward and the quarterbacks, having a couple quarterbacks in this spot. I know you weren't huge on the Jalen Walker pick. It's just a weird spot for Carolina to be in. But any other thing really stand out that's important to note from these first 8?
Yeah, I just want to reemphasize that the Travis Hunter pick is purely speculative off the fact that they go with a veteran quarterback in free agency here. I'm assuming that that's what's going to happen. If we do this again a week from now and they did not end up signing anyone, that's more than likely going to end up being Shadur Sanders, which would already shake up this top 8 pretty drastically. So
And as we get into the second 8, our Bears taking Ashton Jenny out of Boise State, obviously preferencing no trades on this mock. That will change when we do our next one. This was just to kind of lay the ground floor and get us rolling here this offseason. We love the Will Johnson pick to Miami, in JP as well. Tyler Warren with the Colts, an interesting middle group, and obviously our guy Omarion Hampton now in Dallas.
yeah, in my own personal mocks, I've had the two edges in this flip spots. I've had Pierce in Atlanta, and I've had Green in New Orleans. But I think just based off the combine, that teams are going to be drooling over James Pierce. I'm not a super big James Pierce guy, but that's really the only thing that stuck out to me in this grouping.
We had to 17 through 24, a couple of Bears division rivals rounding it out with Green Bay in Minnesota. We have this run on pass catchers as well from 20 to 22, and we've said it with 2 AFC West teams and an AFC North squad. We want to reiterate as well. I'm pretty sure JP is still on board. If this is the order 20 through 22, Denver, Pittsburgh, Chargers, it will all be pass catchers. We had this 2 years ago with Seattle, with JSN. I don't know why I'm drawing blanks. And Quentin Johnston was involved in
Quentin
that tree on
Johnston
that one as well.
and man, who was the Zay Flowers?
And Zay Flowers. Yes. So that is what we have here. Obviously, Loveland being a tight end, but we have pass catchers going here at 20 through 22. And our lone linebacker in Jihad Campbell going at 19. That was JP's pick to Tampa Bay. Anything to add in this grouping, JP?
Yeah, this I have my 13th and 14th prospect going back to back at 23 and 24 is so scary, especially when they're both coming in division. Barron and Starks are both top 15 players in this class, and the slide on safety it just happens. It's one of those things where it's like drafting a running back. You mentioned it, I believe, with the linebackers and safeties. They're just not, they don't get drafted high anymore. It's a product of the new NFL, but I mean, still getting a player like Starks at 24 and a player like Barron at 23 is super scary for the future of the Bears.
Most definitely. And as we rounded out, some fun picks and some fallers here at 25 through 32. Gray Zabel getting himself into the first round, North Dakota State product, adding to the beefed up interior of the Texans O line. A run on edges with Stewart and Williams going flipped at 28 29. Calvin Banks and Josh Simmons stopped their fall here with the Rams and the Ravens. And obviously, we just came over those back 3 picks of the 3 best teams in football and how hard that's going to be for them to make those selections. JP, I know you're huge on Gray Zabel at 25. I'll let you add your thoughts here. And before we sign off, the 2 or 3 fallers from this draft that we did not get into the first round.
Yeah, Agbuka has got to be the one that really jumps off at us, not making it into the first. But one thing I do quickly want to add: if you told me after the draft that this was the fourth of the draft where we got all 8 players correct, I would not be shocked at all. It is so random that it almost is so sensible because the draft never shakes out how it's supposed to, except
No.
the given when there's top 3 picks like last year, everybody knew it was some combination of Williams, Daniels, May. But this is so random, and such a collection of players. I think even when you were picking it, some of the guys' ranks were below 40, and we have them going here. It makes so little sense that it makes so much sense that this is my favorite eighth of our entire mock.
And that'll do it for the first episode, Just Beavin 1.0 Mock Draft Edition. Thanks so much for tuning in. Welcome back to the channel. We will catch you guys next time here on the Just Beavin podcast.